Welcome to DDRC members, staff, and guests. Multiple staff members are present to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly and all applicants and citizens are able to communicate with the commission at the appropriate time. If you are here today and would like to speak about a case, please provide your name clearly into the microphone, and please be sure to sign in either at the back of the room or at the podium for documentation purposes. If you are here today to speak about a case, you will be called by myself, the chair, and come up to the podium.
Ms. Gallo? Mr. Greenberg? Ms. Jaco?
Here.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Here.
Mr. Salibi?
Here.
And Ms. Thomas?
Here.
We have quorum.
In order to avoid ex parte communications, DDRC members are under strict instructions not to discuss cases under consideration with the public or with each other outside of the public forum. The meeting typically starts with staff calling the case, giving a summary of the project, and then calling on the applicant to present if they wish. Decisions are typically made in one evening. Decisions may be appealed within 30 days to a court of competent jurisdiction. Oaths will be administered individually as we hear either from applicants or from live speakers. Applicants with requests before the DDRC are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the DDRC or staff regarding the request. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. Applicants may have 5 minutes to respond. Staff has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. Are there any changes to the agenda?
We've had one change under the regular agenda. Item number 3, 1720 Enery Avenue, a request for design design approval for an addition in the Wales Garden Architectural Conservation District has been deferred.
The DDRC uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. If a member of the DDRC or the general public wants to discuss an item on the consent agenda, that item is removed from the agenda and considered during the meeting. The DDRC then approves the remaining consent agenda items. Will staff please review the consent agenda?
Certainly. Our one item is 1001 Union Street, request for preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in Earlwood Protection Area, Area A.
Is there anyone from the DDRC that would like this item removed from the consent agenda? No? Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to have this item removed from the consent agenda? All right, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda and also the January minutes.
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda and the January minutes.
Ms. Gallo? Yes. Mr. Greenberg? Ms. Jaco?
Yes.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
And Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda. First case.
The first case on the regular agenda is case DDRC 2025-0002 for 4623 North Main. This is in the North Main corridor overlay, and it is a request for design approval for the development of a multi-family townhome that features a courtyard with parking and green spaces for tenant use. The project will be split up into 2 phases of development. Phase 1 consisting of the construction of 2 townhomes, the one closest to North Main and the second one in from it. And the second phase consisting of the construction of the 2 most inward to the site. Each townhome consists of 4 two-story units. Staff finds that the placement of the townhome on North Main within Phase 1 of construction effectively screens the parking located on the interior of the site. This is per the guidelines in the North Main District on site planning, landscaping in the proposed development, namely shade trees and shrubs, and an 8-foot tall wooden fence that circles the perimeter of the northern and eastern property lines help further screen the parking on the interior of the site from the right-of-way. Section on parking placement in the guidelines, staff finds that the placement of the parking designated for the townhomes on the site's interior is appropriate. The entry driveway and coming through and pushing through this first courtyard and then snaking along the northern property line facilitates green spaces on the south of the site for tenant use. And this driveway then also serves as a conduit between the sidewalk along North Main and the walkway here on the interior of the site, giving access to these tenants within these 3 townhomes to North Main. On the section on building design in the guidelines, which has language surrounding that the architecture should be urban and therefore flexible for various businesses over time. Says that a building should not be so strongly identified with a single business that it cannot reasonably be adopted to another use in the future. Corporate identity should be contained in signage, storefront displays, and/or artwork. Staff finds that, so the language on adaptability in this section is primarily or applies mostly to buildings with commercial uses. Despite that, the project certainly has an urban character in its density of units and its dynamic articulation of the exterior faces. Staff finds that while the project initially was proposed to have a flat roof, this proposal for a pitched roof is appropriate. Although, again, the flat roof initially proposed was I don't want to say preferred, but made sense given the orthogonal quality of the facades. In the section on orientation and elevation, the front facade of the first townhome being proposed, the one on North Main, is parallel to North Main per the guidelines, and the staggering of units in plan seen here within each townhome has the effect of creating a dynamic building form, which is recommended in the guidelines. An aluminum awning is placed above the entrances of each of the townhomes that further call attention to the entryway. Staff finds that the inclusion of mailbox, the additional inclusion of mailboxes, lighting, and address numbers mounted on the areas of the facade surrounding these front doors would further distinguish the entryways. On the section of the guidelines surrounding entrances, which states that entrances shall have direct access to the sidewalk and street and have strong entry architecture to ensure pedestrians can easily identify the entrance. Staff finds that the entrances to the townhome on North Main is distinguished by walkways that connect those entrances to the sidewalk, show you in plan, sidewalk on North Main. Staff finds that it would be appropriate that a similar condition, landscaping that serves as a buffer between the building's facade and the sidewalk, exists at the entrances to the interior townhomes that exists here in this proposed site plan. There's a slight grade change between the sidewalk of North Main and the front entrances to the units directly facing North Main. Staff finds it appropriate that the applicant, while maintaining ADA accessibility, uses that grade change to further call attention to the front doors and the entryways on that townhome on North Main. As for the facade elements, the materials, and the windows, staff finds that the sheathing materials proposed for this project, which are brick veneer on the ground floor and vertical non-vinyl board and batten siding on the upper story, appropriate. The proposed windows are adequately recessed from the surface of the facades so as not to be flush mounted per the guidelines. Staff recommends approval of the request with details to be deferred to staff, including but not limited to the further articulation of the entryways through the addition of mailboxes, address lettering, and lighting surrounding the front doors, ensuring that the entrances to the townhome on North Main feature walkways connecting to the sidewalk, which, just to provide some clarity, that was drawn in the initial site plan submitted. It's not shown in this drawing. So just to ensure that that is the work that is being done. Line the walkway, this is the next condition, line the walkway providing connectivity to the sidewalk on North Main with landscaping. So that's this walkway here. Provide landscaping along the sidewalk, and then do the same along the southern face of the townhome, second closest to North Main. That would be this face of the townhome. And finally, coordinate with staff on the details of the awning that will be placed above the entrances.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
The applicant is here.
Do you plan to do a presentation or anything you want us to give? Okay. Well, why don't you just come on up to the podium and state your name. I'll swear you in, and we'll see if anybody has any questions. So state your name, please.
Dan Scherer.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
All right, thank you. I'll open up to, does any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant or staff? Well, I'm sorry I made you come up then, I guess.
Any issues with
need to
staff
move on.
recommendations?
Oh,
Sorry?
that's
Do you have any
let's go ahead.
issues with staff recommendations?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any issues with the recommendations staff has made?
I do not, no. They've been great to work with, by the way.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, well, that was an excellent question. All right, well, then with that, I will open it up for a motion. Oh, wait, sorry, we need to do public comment. Lord, I'm just moving over here and I'm all over the place. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this case? All right. Now I'll open it up for a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant a certificate of design approval for new construction at 4623 North Main Street in keeping with the North Main corridor guidelines, with the following details deferred to staff. Further articulation of the entryways through the addition of mailboxes, address lettering, and lighting surrounding the front doors. Ensuring that the entrances to the townhomes on North Main feature walkways connecting to the sidewalk. Line the walkway providing connectivity to the sidewalk along North Main Street with landscaping, and do the same along the southern face of the townhome second closest to North Main, and coordinate with staff on the details of the awnings above the entrances.
Second.
Ms. Jaco,
Yes.
Ms. Gallo,
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg, Mr. Lee Decker,
Yes.
Mr. Salibi,
Yes.
and Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next case.
All right, this is 2819 Bratton Street. It's a request for certificate of design approval for exterior changes in the Melrose Heights Oaklawn Architectural Conservation District. It's a 1930s house, which features wood siding, a front-facing exterior chimney, and dental molding detailing in the windows, doors, and in the roof fascia. The house includes replacement windows and has a replacement front door. The current proposal is for siding replacement. The original siding uses mitered corners rather than corner boards. So attention to detail with any replacement material is vital in order to preserve the character of the home. Staff evaluated the siding in April 2024, and at that time, the original siding did have areas that would require replacement material. Based on staff's evaluation at the time, the most concentrated area of damaged boards that would require replacement rather than just repair was on the front elevation. Here, there are more cracked and warped boards than boards that only show signs of paint buildup. cracked and warped boards would need replacement rather than just being repaired. And based on that, staff estimated that the front elevation would require approximately 50% or so replacement siding. Most of what you could call deterioration that staff noted was really paint buildup and poor maintenance related to scraping paint before repainting. And since this is a 1930s house, it's been building up for quite a while. Based on staff's assessment, the front facade was in the worst condition, while the sides primarily just needed scraping and repainting. So when you consider all the elevations together, it's likely that less than 50% of the total siding needed replacement at the time. According to the contractor for the project, approximately 2/3 of the existing siding may need replacement. He also stated concerns related to removing siding as it may disturb other boards in the process, which could lead to more cracking or deterioration of the siding as you're trying to replace boards. Staff has not assessed the site since April 2024, and while additional deterioration may have occurred since that time, I've not seen evidence that as much as 2/3 of the siding needs replacement. The guidelines state to retain wooden materials and features such as siding, cornices, brackets, soffits, fascia, window architrave, and doorway pediments. These are essential components of a building's appearance and architectural style. Guidelines also state to repair or replace where necessary deteriorated material, duplicating in size, shape, and texture the original as closely as possible, considering original characteristics like board width, length, exposure, and trim detailing. A request for wholesale siding replacement is rare and requires great consideration as it involves the removal of a large amount of historic material. With the information available to staff, staff is not confident that the condition of the siding necessitates wholesale replacement. But staff does recognize that additional deterioration may be noted in the course of removing historic siding, but that can vary greatly from elevation to elevation. As such, staff feels that additional updated information is needed to provide an informed recommendation as to whether or not wholesale replacement is applicable for this property. Staff recommends deferral of the request that additional information may be gathered about the condition of the existing siding and the difficulty related to its removal. In order to provide the best information to the DDRC, staff is recommending that a small area of the building be used as a test panel to demonstrate to staff the process used for removing siding. And just these were included in your application or your evaluation packet. This is just where we noted the areas that needed replacement siding rather than just scraping, whereas the side of the house has more paint buildup than cupping or warping. And the applicant is here to speak on the request. Did you have any questions for staff before?
Does anybody have any questions for staff?
Two quick questions. One, so do the guidelines require that the majority of the siding be deteriorated?
Well, some of our guidelines do have like the 50% rule. These guidelines don't. They don't mention 50%. The guidelines just state to retain wooden materials like siding. There's no threshold.
Okay, and assuming that it is over 50%, if that's material, has the applicant presented what replacement materials they would use? And is that, I assume that's something we would need to consider in the case that a wholesale replacement is approved. Is that right?
Yes. So part of the difficulty is that if you're going to do wholesale replacement, we typically would recommend a cement fiberboard rather than modern wood. And there are cement fiberboard products that you can miter the corners. It's made so you can do that, which is kind of the main design element of the siding of this house. So there are products available that can do that. If it needed partial repair and replacement, you would need to go back with wood rather than the cement fiberboard to piece in, because cement fiberboard and wood have different expansion and contraction properties, so you cannot put them side by side. Over time, they will start causing more problems to the building. So if it's it's one approach or the other, you can't really combine the two approaches. So that's part of the problem in wanting to gather more information to make sure that, before we say, oh yeah, you can replace all of this historic material with something that's modern, that there aren't other options that might be available.
So I guess maybe to beat down a little more, it's not necessary that they provide like examples of the materials they suggest using, as long as the sides can be mitered.
Well, I mean, there's only so many of that kind of cement fiberboard product that does that. Most of it's very like thin, and you couldn't really miter it. So there are other products that can be. If you Google it, there's only a few products that come up. So yes, I mean that would need to be provided before they purchase the material, just to make sure. But if wholesale siding replacement was allowed, we would allow for cement fiberboard, some type of product like that.
Okay, thank you.
So the repair is an in-kind replacement, wood for wood, and what we're calling wholesale is substitution of a different material and complete removal of the wood?
Correct.
Any other questions of staff at the moment? All right, okay, the applicant can come forth, yeah. When you get up, if you can state your name into the microphone,
My name is Savannah Martin. I'm the homeowner.
and do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and to answer the original question, it would be fiber siding or the hardy board. So, all right, to get started, I made a little PowerPoint because I wasn't sure how to, go about this. So originally, I purchased. Wait, this is not. Okay, there we go. So I knew this when I bought the house back in April of 2023. I moved in May of 2023. This was something I knew that was coming. However, obviously it's not a cheap project, so I had to save up a little bit of money. So I started looking in March of 2024. To begin with, I didn't know about the historic designation and all the guidelines that went with that. I know, shocking, but I didn't. However, if you take a look, I have made a lot of efforts to try to find someone to do the siding and have been very, very unsuccessful. This isn't even a comprehensive list of everyone I've contacted. And if you will note, there are several people on the list that have recommended contractors by the DDRC. This is just for completeness sakes. This is one of the quotes that I was given. This is one that was recommended by the DDRC, a contractor by the name of Walker Davies. He does align more with what the DDRC recommended. However, he wasn't very keen on doing this project, so this kind of was just something that the DDRC had on record. This is showing that really just the front and the sides are what the historic district is concerned with. Talking about the 50% or less, this is kind of what I wanted to illustrate with this point. I was given the opportunity or recommended to reach out to people in my neighborhood. So I reached out on Facebook because I was running out of options. And actually our historic neighborhood president, Josh Shelton, recommended my current contractor, David. So he is the only one that has continued follow through with me. These are the pictures that we've already reviewed. However, I think the 50% is a pretty subjective estimate of numerical damage to the house since it hasn't been measured. There is concern for underlying damage to the house that this estimate does not take into account. That has been noted by several contractors that have visited my home. And this is just a different view of that. So this is, again, the discussion of less than 50% replacement versus the contractor. He estimates about 2/3 needs replacement. And this is the quote that I've been given. I'm sure if you take a look at the numbers, 40,000 isn't a cheap number for anybody, let alone someone that is, a solo homeowner with one income. Pending what the recommendations are, keep in mind that, there are financial constraints here with it being one income. Lastly, this is where we talked about the cement fiberboard, which is what we are planning to do. So I just wanted to have that noted here that was the baseline recommendations given. So in conclusion, I've been working at this tedious process for about 11 months. I do fear if not addressed soon, the exterior will continue to deteriorate. I'm hoping that this will improve the appearance and the quality of the home siding while still meeting the baseline standards per the DDRC. So ultimately, we are looking for approval with the hardy board or the fiber cement siding with the quote listed on slide 13 for my home at 2819 Bratton Street.
So let me just clarify something.
for sure.
So your recommendation from your contractor is that it all needs to be replaced?
Yes, because there is concern for underlying damage to the home, and he is here today if you have any specific questions for him, as I'm not the expert.
Yeah, I think that's where we're trying to get our arms around.
That's fair.
Since our charge is to preserve the historic element. So I don't know, I'll open up. Does anybody have a question of the applicant on the panel? Yeah,
One of the comments in your bullet points was lost time and wages. Is there,
Yes, I have to leave work every time this is done, so obviously that impacts me over a period of time. And then, staff wants to come out and have David test it. That also costs. So, I mean, this delays the process even more. And, I have to take off work, leave work, different things to continue this process. And it's been almost a year at this point, and we've gotten nowhere. And I've had several contractors recommended what David recommended as well. It's a slew of different recommendations. No one has followed through except for David.
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Two questions. One, does your quote include, I know you said it's, hardy plank, cement, fiberboard, whatever the material is, it sounds like that's approved by staff. Does the quote include mitering of the sides?
It does not, but I was hoping if he came today, he could speak a little bit more of that. I know there was some concern of if that would affect the warranty of the product. I haven't done any more research there because that's not my arena.
Okay, and if, assuming we did approve the request, is that something you would be open to? Or would that negate the approval, right? I mean,
I'm not sure, just because of finances. I mean, $40K is not cheap. So I'm not sure if that would affect the price that I was given or not. I'm not sure. I have to talk more with David about that. That was newer information presented more recently about the mitering.
okay, and did you get a quote for what it would cost if you did replace the wood siding?
No one has followed through with me. Everyone has recommended other products. The only person that actually provided me something was Walker Davies, but he was not interested in doing it from at least what I gathered from him. No one has even given me tangible proof other than the Southern, which probably wouldn't be something y'all would approve at baseline because that was before I knew about the historic designation, and also what David has provided.
Thank you.
any other questions? I guess,
I'd like to hear from the contractor about the removal process and the feasibility of mitering the corners.
Well, I think we'd like, if you come up, would you state your name? I'm swear you in.
David Williams.
And do you swear to tell the truth during this proceeding?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Because I guess I was trying to get my head around, help us understand you. So your assessment was that 2/3 of it needs to be,
Yeah, that's just a quick assessment, kind of looking around at what needs to be done. Some of the areas where you've got your electrical connection, your plumbing, some of the HVAC, some of that has to be removed to get to the damaged areas. And the process is really just kind of tedious. Most of that would be labor, so that you don't damage the existing, what you want to keep, to replace something new. The major issue with this right here, as far as me pushing to where you really just need to go back with something new to make it look like what you guys are looking for, to resemble what's there, is that, for one thing, if I were to replace every board on there with new boards, caulk it up and everything, I still wouldn't want to be liable for something that happens on the adjacent lumber of the siding. That's my primary concern. But to
and
be able
just,
to
if you don't
stand
mind, come up a little closer to the microphone. So if I heard you, just repeat that. You're concerned with putting wood back, like replacing the wood that's damaged with new wood. What was the concern?
Really, to me, is the liability to say if something were to come up here and there'd be future damage, to where I would be accountable for something that is like, well, that maybe that piece of siding here that caused a problem somewhere down the line wasn't something that I replaced. And then you got to go through all the motions of trying to say, well, who's accountable for now? I've got, rotten damage here or there 4 or 5 years down the line. That's something that I know a lot of other builders just want to stay away from. But if you can pull off the product, what's there now, put a new product on, hardy plank, you go with 3/8 sided or 3/4 sided and match what's there, color it the same, you're gonna have a much better product, last for a long time, be similar to what's there now, and she won't ever have any more problems. The only thing that's listening to you guys, what I don't understand is why the corners have to be mitered. Most siding houses now, if you're familiar with it, have just two corner boards, and they just, everything butts to it. But to try to make sure that all that's mitered, to me, is just, I don't understand you're trying to keep that look. It's just baffling to me.
Did, Commissioner, another question?
I'm having a little trouble hearing, and I'm not sure if you addressed the mitering, if the possibility of that. Could you
Well,
clarify that?
Yeah, a new product fiber cement board could be mitered.
Okay.
You could apply it the same way, but it would probably have to be a little thicker material to match what's there now. But like I said, I don't understand the reason why you want to go back with a mitered corner. Because most typical jobs where there's new hardy plank siding, you just have two corner boards on any given corner or inside corner. It's not a lot of mitering involved.
What do they look like? Are they lapped one over the other, or how do the corners look?
Basically, you got a corner, and in any given house, you got a corner board, two corner boards, and the siding butts to it from each side at a 90-degree angle.
I'm still not following. You have a vertical corner board across the horizontal boards, or?
He's talking about using corner boards at the corner rather than just the wood being mitered. So like most houses do have corner boards. This house is fairly unique, especially in this historic district, because it doesn't have corner boards, which is a key architectural feature of this house, which is why we recommend keeping it, because it's a historic district.
Yeah.
But there are houses in Earlwood that also have mitered corners like this. So it's not something that's super common. It's a totally legitimate way to build a house, though.
Yeah, I mean, the new siding can be mitered, but what I priced for her was a 3/8-inch thick product, and that's a little more difficult to miter. It can still be done, and I don't know how the look would resemble, but something to be almost exact, except a product that ain't gonna rot, a 3/4-inch fiber cement board is what we'll do, but it's gonna be a little more expensive. And those corners can be mitered to match.
Well, the products that are available, how closely do they match the existing width and profiles of
Oh, it can match up almost exact. You can have a smooth face or you can have a wood grain face and just paint it that same brown that, it's just going to be a lot better product in the end.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, well, so I'm hearing, to me, we still have two challenges here. One, our staff being comfortable that what percentage of the house needs to be repaired or removed, because I'm still not quite clear on that. I understand your opinion too, so, and yours from last year. And then the issue, if it is replaced, the reasonable substitution. So, okay. Any other questions for this gentleman? From anybody here? Yep.
I think my questions are answered, but once we get to the motion, then I'll have another comment or so.
Assuming, based on just your kind of general review of the property, assuming we said no to the wholesale replacement, but I guess in which case you would have to replace the damaged portions with wood material. I mean, I guess maybe that's a non-starter because it sounds like you wouldn't take that job because of the inherent liability. Is that right?
Well, I probably have a clause in the contract to state that, I can't be accountable for stuff that would happen outside of what I repaired.
So I guess if you did do that, ballpark figure on cost. So now I think we're sitting at what, 38,000, would that then be 75,000?
No, as far as going back with a 3/4-inch product, I don't know, it's probably another 3,000 or 4,000 just for the material.
That would be to replace the damaged portions you've noticed on.
No, just to replace the damaged portions, that's why, that's kind of vague, just like the other contractors. I'm just taking a wild guess. I don't know if you're familiar with pulling off the siding or not, but you got two pieces, you got a piece of lap side and another one over here. Well, if you got to get this piece off right here, You got to cut it, get up underneath there and cut the nail underneath this lap piece to get to the nail to get it out. That's just time consuming, and you could crack the piece right above it trying to get it, then you got to replace another piece. It could just kind of snowball, so to speak.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I just want to comment that
Yeah.
the reason that this is an unusual case is because they're asking for wholesale replacement. Having boards here and there replaced is very normal. It's a very common thing to do. You know, sometimes there's a patch that's this big where they have to remove the wood and put it in. So that's not an unusual request, and that's something that we approve quite frequently at staff level. But this is asking for wholesale replacement, which is part of the issue and why it's at DDRC.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that for everybody. I agree. Thank you. Any other questions? of this
I have
gentleman?
a question.
Oh, yeah.
Has staff been out since April 2024?
Looked at the house from the street, but not on the property.
Yeah.
Is that something that's we're planning to do? Do we know?
Well,
Well-
it's something I was hoping to do.
Okay.
Yeah, time kind of got away from us with
Right.
this, before this meeting, with the holidays and everything. But
It just, that's why staff's recommending deferral, because I don't think we feel we have enough information to understand what needs to be done. So, yeah, I mean, good clarification. All right, thank you. Was there anybody from the public to speak on this? I'd only ask that because I don't see anybody else out here, so just double checking. All right. Any other questions to staff or clarifications? Anybody?
I just have a comment
Yeah.
that normally we're reacting to what the applicant is asking for. And in this case, we're sort of reacting to what the staff wants to do, which is an exploration. And I know we like to resolve things clearly, up or down, yes or no. And we're in a situation where the applicant has stated it takes time and money just to deal with our process or the city's approval process. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can get clarity without an intermediate step of opening up part of the, siding and seeing what happens.
Well, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to what staff's even asking us to do, which is defer this until more information is known. Is that what you're supporting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have a problem with deferral, but I wonder if we're going to be any closer to resolving the question of, are we
Right,
going to
deferring with some
approve
action.
wholesale replacement versus repair?
Yeah, I don't know if we have the information, enough information to know that, right? It seems like we don't have enough information to know
Well-
that, or is that, are you saying, what are you saying over there? Or do,
I'm not ready to I can make a motion for deferral, but I'm hoping that in the intermediate time, there's more clarity on the feasibility, how close a wholesale replacement, quote unquote,
right,
could bring the project to as close to the historical appearance of the building as possible without damaging, any of the historic details, like the windows molding or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
No, I think we're all on the same page on that, yeah.
It was a
No, I
clarification.
agree. Is there a comment or question of staff?
Yes, I would like to make a comment. I spoke with my contractor just to kind of elaborate on what you were saying. Even if we take a piece of, material off currently, it's not going to show what the whole house is like. So that's another concern, is even if we do that, it's not going to show the entire house. So the front's a lot worse than the sides, like they've stated and we've stated as well.
Quick question while you're at the podium.
Yeah.
So I guess it sounds like you want us to push forward and allow the wholesale replacement. And if we do that, then all details are going to be deferred to staff because we don't have any information on what the replacement material would look like, what you're planning on doing with the corners, really any details whatsoever. So I guess if we make a motion with details deferred to staff, are you going to be able to live with that, knowing that there's a risk if we make a motion to grant the certificate of design approval, the majority of commissioners could say no, and then you've got to start the process back over again, as opposed to deferral, where you could kind of work at it and then come back next month with minimal effort relative to what it would be if we just said no. So I guess knowing all that, would you be okay with the risk of moving forward on a motion to grant the certificate of design approval?
I guess I need a little bit more information of what you're stating. So like, what do you exactly mean?
If we take a vote on approving
Yes.
and most commissioners say no,
Yeah.
then am I correct in my understanding that that kicks out the application and we have to start over from square one?
So my aim in recommending deferral was to not recommend denial.
Sure.
So I was trying not to just say, let's deny it, period. With the information I have right now, I would recommend denial. But I was hoping for a deferral so I could gather more information, just so, yes, so the application's not kicked out and have to start over again, basically. So that.
Yeah, what I don't want is the applicant to think that we're deferring and delaying the process, because I'm appreciative of the fact that you've been working at this for, 3/4 of a year. And so if we vote to defer, you could feel a certain way about that. But the alternative is we vote on granting the application and we say no, in which case it would probably be difficult to make an application ready for next month's meeting,
That's true.
delaying the process even more. So I guess what I'm asking is, are you okay with that risk?
I mean, it sounds kind of like we're at the point of deferral regardless. So I think that's what I would have to go with, just because it doesn't sound very positive.
I'm only posing the question because I don't know how my commissioners would vote on a motion to approve.
Yeah, a deferral might provide opportunity for you and the contractor to look into the feasibility and the cost that you're going to be willing to bear to get the mitered corners, to get the historical appearance in a place where everybody's happy if we approve the wholesale. We have a hand raised in the back. Can we hear from the contractor?
What, okay, well, we're totally out of our forum of our,
Sorry.
with our speakers here. So I guess staff, you can advise what we should do or not do henceforth. So what was the question? You had a question for the contractor again?
We're considering deferral or, in the extreme denial. And one of the opportunities for deferral would be not just to explore how damaging the removal and repair process might be, but also for you and the contractor to look at, is it really going to cost significantly more to use a material that's more amenable to corner mitering process, or is that doable with the existing 3/8 inch thick material that you're looking at now?
Well, let me put it in this perspective. I hear what everybody's saying, and I know everybody's trying to be understanding of what everybody's been through, but I mean, our charge is to preserve the historic nature of this house, okay? So our number one charge for me is what can we do to keep the wood? Now, if we come back and say that's not feasible for X, Y, Z, we're willing to talk about that, but I don't think I've heard why that's not feasible. It may be, but we probably need our staff to also chime in on that. Then the next question is, what's the right material and the requirement to make it look like it does now, right? And obviously it's unique, even in the neighborhood. So, I mean, that's where I'm at, is like, I appreciate you're spending your time. I mean, we are too. I understand that. But it isn't our charge to make sure that we've got this house preserved as best we can.
I just
So-
fear that with continued waiting, it continues to rot. Because no one's wanting to take this
I understand
project.
that, but I mean, my concern is we got to make a decision based on good information.
I guess
So I don't know. That's where I'm at.
I mean, I could just leave it.
So staff hasn't reviewed, other than view from the street, the property since April of '24. I mean, both the applicant and her architect or contractor have stated, I guess not necessarily under the penalty of perjury, but, under they're swearing to tell the truth in these proceedings. I mean, And looking at the pictures from the front elevation and the sides, it does appear that substantial, maybe even more than 50% is damaged. So I guess if that's the hurdle we're trying to get over, I'm okay taking their word. But then it comes down to materials and mitering and, all the other issues, which, deferral is not really going to do anything to solve, right? I think that could be handled by voting on a motion to approve, but leaving all details deferred to staff. And if it just so happens that the details can't be worked out, then they can't move forward with the renovation.
Yeah, is there a non-biased party that we could utilize from staff?
Is there a what?
A non-biased party we could use from staff? Is there someone else that's maybe not been a part of this and gotten emotions involved?
I mean, I think you could rely that staff, if, staff would move forward with whatever motion we made in an unbiased manner, they wouldn't hold it against you.
Yeah,
I guess if that's what you're concerned about.
Yeah. No,
I mean, that's been that's been at least my experience working with staff for years on these projects.
Yeah, and I would say too that, we totally understand Savannah's called a lot of people trying to get them out. Walker Davies is someone we've worked with before. His evaluation of the property, even though if you didn't want to take the job, was slightly different than David's, and other contractors might be slightly different than that. I would say the way staff evaluated the property kind of more aligns with how Mr. Davies wrote up that email or whatever for her, that the front is bad and the sides are okay. She's done what, trying to get the contractors to come out, and she's gotten a couple of opinions that aren't necessarily even consistent. So staff, we're trying to get more information to try to, confirm what that is based on our knowledge of how historic wood works. And this is what we do every day. So it's just asking for deferral to gather that information.
It seems to be, there's a couple questions. We're looking at here. The first is whether or not more than 50% of the siding needs to be replaced. Based on the pictures and just an eyeball, if someone asked me, would you take the over or under 50%, I'd take the over. I mean, the side looks, frankly, worse than the front, at least that right side, looking at the front door. And then I guess the second question would be, if it is more than 50%, and you are eligible to replace all of the siding, do the corners have to be mitered?
Yeah.
Where they meet? I mean, so in my head, I'm sort of thinking about, how do we make that determination on what percentage is damaged? I would say it's more. And then, if you were to do a wholesale replacement, the mitered corners would need to be preserved, which it sounds like you would need to use a different material or at least a thicker siding than what you have. And so, I'm almost inclined to make a motion finding that it is more than 50% based on all the information that we've heard, but that if you were going to go forward with the wholesale replacement, that those corners would need to be mitered. But again, if there's a chance for you to work it out with staff and figure out their details and maybe even get a quote as to what that additional cost, if any, would be, maybe that would be in your best interest, but that's, I guess, a decision that you would have to make. So we can press forward and with a motion, and I don't know how everyone else, if they would agree with how I'm looking at it, but at least give you a framework in which to proceed without coming back in front of us, or maybe there's a way to work it out with staff.
Yeah, I don't know, commissioners, what?
Can I ask a hypothetical of staff? Let's say that it was over 50%. What would your recommendations be on an approval?
If it was over 50% deteriorated, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that's normally something we could approve at staff level even. If something's deteriorated to the point where it needs to be replaced, we do that at staff level all the time. It's rare because historic wood is much better and rot resistant than than modern wood. But, that's why repair, we approve that at staff level because that's, kind of normal maintenance.
Oh, sorry, I may not have been clear. So let's say that, we make a motion to grant the certificate of design approval for a wholesale replacement. In that case, what would staff's list of recommendations be? Like, for example, that the corners have to be mitered, or that the material has to be X, or the color has to be Y, right? What would those recommendations be?
Well,
And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. You
Yeah.
probably didn't really prepare for that.
We'd want
but-
the original design features to be, the historic design features to be preserved as much as possible, including the corner miters, the width, and the appearance of the siding. That would be my two.
There's a list of products which are pre-approved. They would just need to be mitered to fit those design aesthetics, right?
I just have one quick comment. I appreciate the time that you're putting into this because I also live in an older home and I understand how frustrating it can be. But the house has been standing for a long time. And I think we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals when it seems like we just need to expand our timeline a bit so that we can gather more information to make the best decision about this historic home. So I think we're asking for some information and talking about making a motion that is based on a lot of question marks instead of just expanding our time to fact find and get some more information.
I don't know, I hear your comments, but I also heard staff, it's hard to know what needs to be scraped and is salvageable versus what truly needs to be replaced. I mean, this is always the challenge we have on a project like this, and I just don't know. I mean, that's where I'm not comfortable that I know, that we know. I'll open it up. Any other questions to the homeowner? Anyone? All right, thank you. Well, I'll open it up for someone who wants to take a stab at a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of design, a certificate of design approval for exterior changes to 2819 Bratton Street, with the condition that the applicant and contractor work with staff to preserve as many of the historic design features as possible, including the corner miters, the width and the profile of the siding boards, and any other details that the staff identifies as historically important.
I have a question on that motion. How does that address the wood element? Or is it you're just deferring it to staff to figure out whatever it is? Is that kind of how that is? How was it worded?
So the request is for wholesale replacement. So if the motion is to approve,
Well-
you're approving wholesale replacement.
Can I amend that to say repair or replacement, depending on further study by
Well, then I think
contractor and staff?
that takes us back to kind of where we are back. I think
Well-
the request is to accept their proposal. So staff, I don't know if, can we help me out here on the motion front? If you approve, what they're asking for is to go ahead
I
and
guess that's
replace it.
essentially what my
So
motion is.
that's what, I just want to
Yeah,
clarify what you're saying, all right.
Bottom line, that's what it is, I guess.
Sorry, there's been a lot of discussion going on. Just to clarify, your motion is to allow the wholesale replacement essentially with all design details being referred to staff.
Yes, with the specific design details of the corner mitering and the profile appearance of the siding boards that are going to be used.
Okay, and I would ask, since you're allowing for wholesale replacement, which is not something that we typically do, if there is some type of condition that makes this project exceptional in allowing for that. So if you could please include that in the motion.
I think taking the applicant's word that the majority of the siding is damaged. Also based on our subjective review of the images submitted. I don't know, just thinking out loud. It's Charles' motion, so I'll let him discuss as he sees fit.
that would leave it pretty wide open for an exceptional circumstance needs to be a unique circumstance that wouldn't be applicable to other projects that might come forward with similar requests. In order to, since this is an unusual, I mean, we're charged to maintain historic materials. So usually when y'all, make a motion that is separate from the guidelines, there's a unique and compelling reason for that is cited, that it makes the motion defensible per our guidelines.
Other than it being a frustrating circumstance, I don't understand what would make this unique.
I guess we're not going to have a second to that motion, so.
Well, I might. I mean, I'm looking at the application, and the staff finding is that it is likely less than 50% of the total signing necessitated replacement at the time. I mean, so anything over 50%, that wouldn't be a unique situation, right? Because the applicant would be entitled to replace it all if she wanted to.
So we've used the 50% marker for other neighborhoods, and some of them have it written in their guidelines. It is not actually written in these guidelines. We just say that because, if most of your material is gone and you have to replace most of it anyways, but there's no hard and fast line with that because it's not actually in the guidelines.
So even if we all
It's just
agree.
an estimate.
So if everyone in the room agreed that it was 60% needed replacement, the city recommendation would still be to replace the existing material and not have wholesale removal and replacement with a
Not
different?
necessarily. DDRC could find that as the exceptional condition. It's rare to find a house with historic siding that needs 60% replaced. So that could, what do you think?
Well, I feel like we're kind of hamstrung here because there hasn't been a finding. I mean, that could be a basis for it, but really the examination to date hasn't really given us any indication of what the city thinks is the materials that need to be replaced.
Right, which is why I was asking for deferral.
Okay.
So I think we still have an active motion out there, now that we clarified what the motion was. So there's an open motion out. All right, if there's no second, what does that mean?
It would just die on the table.
The
and
motion is not,
it's
okay, so
still
I'm opening up
for someone else to make
opening
another
it up
motion.
for a new motion. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer so that the staff can gather additional information.
Right, so if you will, state the address and the district,
And
yes.
this is for 2819 Bratton Street. Request for certificate of design approval or exterior change.
Okay.
Second.
Ms. Jaco?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Greenberg?
No.
Mr. Lee Decker?
Yes.
Mr. Salibi?
Yes.
And Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Other business? I saw you had the annual report out.
Yes, we have the annual report. I'm just going to run through a little bit of the annual report, you guys. And I did have an extra copy. If you want to take one home, Chloe. All right, so we finally put out the 2024 annual report for DDRC. Hopefully y'all got that email earlier today. And just looking at a quick comparison between 2023 and 2024, we did have a few more cases that y'all heard in 2024, largely due to the fact that urban design was pretty busy this past year. They had over twice as many projects that were heard by DDRC in 2024 than they did in 2023. But pretty consistently across the board, Bailey Bill projects and new construction projects tend to be the most reviewed type of case. Old Shandon, Lower Waverly remains one of the busiest historic districts, and City Center is normally also the busiest urban design district. So in urban design, as I said, they had a lot more cases this year. 6 new construction, still the majority being new construction cases. They also had a few changes to approved design, which isn't something you see every year. In this case, these were some of these were new construction projects that were approved by DDRC either this past year or the year before, and they came back with changes to their design. And we had a few projects that are in progress. As far as I know, there weren't any huge projects that finished for urban design in 2024. So a lot of them are still in progress that were approved back in 22 or 23. 2 of these, the top pictures are addition to the church on Assembly Street. And of course, Finley Park is still under construction, as everyone knows. Preservation, as I said, Baileyville projects tend to keep us pretty busy, 29 cases this year, but there are 20 cases of new construction as well. One of the more unusual things we got to do this year, we had a lot of landmark designations. We don't get that every year. So we had 5 properties designated as landmarks in 2024. All of those were approved by City Council. And so far this year, we're already getting some more inquiries about landmarks, so it might be a trend that continues. We had a couple staff appeals this past year. One of them was for signage on Bull Street. The DDRC ruled to deny their appeal, and since then they have installed signage as approved by staff, hanging from the porch rather than in the fascia board. Other staff appeal this year is currently still in court. As I mentioned, new construction is still keeping Betsy pretty busy. 13 out of the 20 proposals for new construction this year were in the Old Shandon, Lower Waverly District. So that area remains very busy with new construction, largely because of the large number of vacant lots that they have there. And then looking at Baileyville, we tend to stay around 25 to 30 applications for preliminary certification each year. Same as this year as last year, more or less. But this year we did have a lot more final certifications come through than the previous year. A lot of them were actually smaller projects. We didn't have any really large commercial projects that completed Baileyville this past year. So the total investment, even though we had 28 final certifications, was just a little bit less, but very close to what we had for final investment in 2023, as far as about the money that was put into the properties for renovations. And one of those projects was 1009 King Street. It was a Craftsman bungalow. It's a single-family home in the Old Shandon area. And they completed this past year, and the renovation expenses total about $180,000. So most of our projects were around, $100,000, $150,000, a few maybe up to about $300,000, but largely it was a bunch of smaller projects that finished up this year. And that is it.
Yeah, it looks good. Thank you for doing that. Glad we started that.
Can I ask you a question? The landmark nominations, did they come mostly from the applicants, or does staff do that? Just all from the applicants?
Yeah, they're always from the property owners.
We have to do our own research sometimes to write the evaluations, but the property owners are the ones who are asking it to be landmarked.
Did that answer? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other business? No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There you go. All right. Thank you.